All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Marietta. I'm the conference chair for PyCon US 2024. And I have with me today Felipe, who is in the programs committee chair for PyCon US. And right now we want to do a session to understand about the talk selection process and the CFP for PyCon US. And the goal really here is to really make sure the audience or the Python community understand what you can do to participate as a speaker at PyCon US and how to submit your talk. And we'll also be hearing advice on how to prepare your proposal. So, Felipe, would you like to introduce yourself and explain your role as the programs chair at PyCon US?
Hi, Marietta. Nice to see you. So yes, my name is Philip. I've been the program committee chair for the PyCon US conference for the past few years. The role of the program committee chair essentially is first off to gather a group of reviewers and then afterwards to perform the administrative duties around managing the review process for PyCon US.
So maybe if you can explain more, because at PyCon US we have talks, we have tutorials and charlas and posters. So what is a talk? Like when should people submit a talk? So maybe if you can talk more about that.
Right. So the talks for PyCon are essentially the main talk track for PyCon US that lasts from traditionally Friday to Sunday. They're preceded by the tutorials, which are longer sessions that are more interactive with participants, and followed by the sprints, which usually last from Monday until later during the week. The talk track is a series of essentially magistral presentations that either last 25 or 45 minutes. And they range various subjects that are always related to Python, the Python community, programming, community aspects, etc.
So regarding the talk length, can you explain the difference between like the 20, like why should someone choose the 25 or 45 talk slot? How does that get decided?
That's a very good question. So first off, let me just say that we have on an usual year about 96 talk slots at PyCon US. The majority of those talk slots are 25-minute slots. We do have a few, I don't have the exact number on hand, but probably around 12 to 16 talks to which we can allocate a 45-minute talk slot. So those talks are much harder to get because a lot of participants are looking to present in 45 minutes format. Usually there's more competition to obtain those talk slots. And they're really reserved for topics that are very important to the community at some point in time. So those topics to which we want to reserve a longer span of time because they're very, very new or interesting to the community at this point in time for this PyCon edition.
Thank you. And are there a specific topic, because Python is really broad, like there is community of Python, there is users of Python and educators. So is there a specific topic people should think about when they want to submit a talk to PyCon US?
The main topic for the talks track is really the Python language and the Python community at large, essentially. So we're looking for topics that are either technical, that may cater to an audience that are more at an experience level that maps to beginners, to advanced talk slots that are really interesting to advanced Python users that, or even core developers, for instance. We're not only looking for technical topics, though. We are also looking for submissions about the Python community, career, diversity and inclusion, anything that may cater to the Python community at large. So this is really a conference, and it's an event that's a conference that's for the Python community and users of Python, developers of Python, open source community members, contributors. I would say the only topic that usually is PyCon is a community conference, so usually we try to have the talk slot really based on community projects, not necessarily commercial endeavors. So if you're looking to submit a talk that's mostly around the commercial topic, this might not be the right venue for you.
Thank you for that clarification. And I would like to mention that if you do have anybody listening and they do have commercial topics, say from their companies, what you can do instead is look into the sponsorship for PyCon US. Um, in I don't remember which specific sponsorship tier, but sponsors get to present presentations in one of the sponsorships benefits. So check out the sponsorship opportunities for if you have something to market or more commercial products that will be more appropriate. So thank you, Philip. Um, so for someone who wants to submit a talk, maybe they didn't even know how to write a talk proposal. Like, can you explain more about how can they submit their talk and if you have any advice about preparing the talk proposal?
Right, of course. So the talk submission process for PyCon is usually a little bit more involved than the talk submission process for some other conference to which you may be accustomed to. So we're really looking for some information with regards to what you're looking to present, but in greater detail than usual, essentially. So you'll submit your talk proposed title, the abstract, a description, but we're also looking for submitters to present an outline of their talk. The outline essentially is usually most submitters will submit it as essentially a two-level list with rough timings with regards to basically what they're looking to talk about during their talk, and this really helps the reviewers review the talks properly.
Okay, just to reiterate then, when you submit your talk to PyCon US, we need a title, talk title, abstract.
Yeah.
So what is the difference between the abstract and like the description?
That's a good question, actually. So the description is mostly a description of what your talk is about, whereas the abstract is the label or the description that will be public facing about your talk on the PyCon website and in the program itself.
Okay. So I guess
Oh, sorry. One of the things that I didn't mention is that we're also looking for some miscellaneous information or classifications with regards to your talk. For instance, we'll ask if your talk caters to a beginner audience or a more advanced audience. And we'll also ask you to provide a category in which your talks could fit. And this really helps us during the review process, being able to bucket talks together for evaluation purposes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's good to know. So regarding the abstract, so abstract is something that you will see in the program, right? As conference attendee, I read the abstract in order to determine whether I will watch the talk or not. So that's the important part. And I guess there's another aspect that is the outline that you mentioned. So the outline is like bullet points type,
Yeah.
maybe with you mentioned the talk, that estimation.
Exactly. So the outline is essentially a rough draft of what the talk is going to look like and really what the reviewers are looking for, because this is not information that will be released to the public. The outline will stay private. It's really for evaluation purposes during the review process for the committee. So they're essentially looking to get a sense of how you're going to present your talk and basically how it will flow during the presentation, and really sort of be able to gauge the takeaway that attendees would get from watching your talk. What this means essentially is that we're looking for basically a two-level list that outlines in a general sense what the talk will talk about, and also provide the rough timing of how much time you're going to spend on each and every topic or each and every aspects of the talk, just so that we can get a sense of how this flows.
Yeah, and I do find personally I submit talks to PyCon US and to other conferences, and I do notice that at PyCon US, the outline is quite important to share with the submitters. I think in my first ever proposal to PyCon US, I did not get accepted And it was only after I learned, for the second year, I asked some people in the Python community for help, and they did explain to me the outline is super important, and it might not be as important. Like it might not be a requirement in other conferences, but in PyCon
That's
US.
right. A lot of our conference don't even ask for an outline. They'll judge submissions based on the description that's provided. At PyCon US, I would say that the review committee takes the outline as the most important item during the review process, or the selection process, rather.
Okay, that's good to know. So if you are submitting a talk, make sure you have the outline and then time estimations. And how detailed this time estimation should be? Like how detailed should the outline be? Do you have any suggestions or?
A rough draft, really. So we're really looking for a list of different topics with rough timings. If the timings vary a little bit in the final form of the talk, that's perfectly understandable. Um, Usually, I would say that most successful submissions usually have perhaps 15 lines within the outline, or between 10 to 15. Not submitting enough information in the outline will probably not help the talk be accepted, but also submitting too much information will also probably be detrimental to the evaluation.
Mm, okay, that's good to know. And maybe if you can explain more about the review process, like how, like, are you the one who review everything? How does that work?
Right. No, I'm not the one that reviews all the talks. So on a good year, PyCon receives about 600 to 700 submissions. So we form a review committee to be able to evaluate all of those proposals. The review process has worked very similarly for the past probably 10 years at this point in time. So it's a two-step process. The first step, which we call evaluation, is a blind review process step where basically the reviewers will review a talk's title, a talk's description, a talk's outline, and basically gauge it against the set of criteria to be able to decide to assign a score to this talk. And then afterwards, we'll make a cutoff and basically keep the top scoring talks so that they make it to the second step of the process, which is bucketing and selection. So during the second step of the process, which is not blind, by the way, at this point, the reviewers have access to the identity of the person that submitted a talk proposal. Talks will be bucketed into different categories. For instance, we'll evaluate talks that are about data science topics together, big data processing together, the Python language itself together. And then afterwards, the review committee will essentially try to hone in on a consensus with regards to the number of talks and which talks should be accepted as part of each bucket that's presented to them at this point. Afterwards, reviewers will, for a few days, have the chance to champion different talks. For instance, if they think that the talk did not necessarily meet the criteria for inclusion, but they, on the scoring basis, they might want to be able to convince different other reviewers that this talk actually brings something to the table, or to the conference rather. And afterwards, we'll essentially look at the overall program and afterwards release the actual schedule to the attendees.
Okay, so if I can summarize a little bit, if I understand it correctly, so there are two steps, and you mentioned like on step two, reviewers get to see more details, like that is not anonymized, but in the step one, things are anonymized, if I understand it correctly. Like
Yes,
you're
that's correct.
just on. Okay, so the first step is when you're just reviewing all the talks, and then on the second stage, that's when you bucket the talks into different buckets and start to making the selection. So okay, so then you mentioned actually, at PyCon US you receive at least 600 proposals and only a small number gets accepted. So I think for someone who's new or never spoken at conference before, this might feel intimidating. Like maybe they don't feel like, maybe they feel discouraged from submitting a talk, knowing the competition is high. Do you have advice for, like, say, new or first-time speakers about this?
It's true that PyCon US is a very competitive conference to get a talk slot at. It is very difficult, and I've seen submitters submit talks for years on end and never receive a talk slot. It's not because the talk proposal is not interesting. It's not because the speaker does not look like an interesting person to listen to. It's just because there are so many good talks to select that some good talks will just simply not be able to make it into the program at any one year. There's no guarantee that the quality talk will receive a talk slot. For first talk submitters, we do offer a mentorship program. So if you're looking, for instance, for advice from submitters that have been successful in the past, or even persons that have been on the review committee in the past, you're able to basically reach out to the PSF, and a mentor will be assigned to you to help you craft your proposal and give you the best chances to be accepted at the conference.
Yeah, thank you. And I think the mentorship program for me personally is something I have make use of in the past. Like I mentioned, my first proposal to PyCon, I didn't get it. It is the second time that actually seek mentorship and get help from experienced speakers to review my proposals before I actually submit, and it really helped a lot. So yes, go reach out. It doesn't even have to be from the PSF. Like if you know other speakers, or you have people in your Python community meetups, they have speakers. You might be able to get in touch with your local Python community members as well. Um, so do you actually have like examples of what is a good proposals versus what is, not so good things that you might reject? Like maybe that could help people prepare their proposals better.
Yes, actually, on the PyCon website, we do have a link to a collection of proposals that have been shared by proposal authors that have been accepted to the conference in the past. So this can give you a good idea of what a review committee looks like when evaluating a proposal that's been successful. Some submitters have also been kind enough to share proposals that have not been accepted to the conference. So that's also valuable information that you can take a look at if you are so inclined. I would say a bad proposal, from my perspective, is a proposal that, first off, is not focused enough. At PyCon, we're really looking for talks that have a clear takeaway that the audience is going to keep after having had the chance to attend your presentation. Not having an outline that's detailed enough is often fatal to a proposal, which may actually have turned out to be a perfectly good talk. So I would say provide details, provide rough timings in your outline. Not too much detail, but just enough so that the committee is able to gauge how your talk is going to flow. That's very important. Obviously, any proposal that does not follow the PSF code of conduct is not going to be accepted, of course. And yeah.
So thank you for all of that. I think it's really important. Personally, I did went to PyCon US website, and I did found some collection of accepted and rejected proposals. So I do find it useful. So yes, if you haven't found the examples of proposals, go to PyCon US website. We have the speaking guidelines there, and there are links to examples of proposals to PyCon US specifically. My next question is because related to, PyCon US is competitive. What about do like does someone need to be famous before they get to speak at PyCon US? Like as speakers, do I need to have a fancy website? Are you gonna be looking at my LinkedIn profile to decide whether I can speak at PyCon US? What do you think?
We welcome experienced speakers as well as beginner speakers at PyCon. So this should not factor with the evaluation of your talk proposal itself. We just want to be able to see who is going to be speaking at a conference, essentially. I would say that we're looking for diversity among our speakers. So a diversity of experience levels is also something that we're looking at. You don't need to have a large collection of previous talks that have been recorded. You don't need to have a fancy website. That's not necessary. You may be a first-time speaker, and we would welcome your proposal.
Cool. Thank you. And yeah, that sounds great. So then I'm wondering, as speakers, do speakers get paid to speak at PyCon US? Do they have what do they receive as speakers at PyCon US?
Speakers by default will not receive anything for speaking at PyCon apart from a token gift that's offered by the conference organization. That being said, the Python Software Foundation does offer a travel grant program for speakers that may not necessarily have the means to attend the conference if they don't receive this travel allowance, essentially. So you can apply for a travel grant by clicking the checkbox in your speaker profile. This information is not used for evaluation purposes. In fact, it's never going to be shown to any community members. Also, I need to mention with regards to PyCon tickets, they're not offered by default to speakers. PyCon operates on the principle that everybody pays. It is possible to receive a complimentary ticket by applying for the financial aid program, though, which is very generous.
Okay, that's good to know because yeah, I mean, personally as a speaker myself, I don't always have an employer who supports me to go to conferences. Sometimes I have such nice employers. Hasn't been always the case. Um, that's really great. And I know that I'm not in the travel grants selection process, but I know that from the PSF side, we are really wanting to support speakers. If that is an issue, like cost is an issue, please don't hesitate to apply for travel grants. As a speaker, you are prioritized to receive it. So
Yeah.
so that's the support we have. So yeah, thank you so much, Philippe, and I really appreciate it. You sharing your thoughts with us, and I really hope that you will have a harder job this year and selecting even more quality proposals to choose from. Um, I also want to mention that as from the, as conference chair perspective, like there are other ways for you to participate in PyCon US other than the talks. And as I mentioned, there are tutorials as well, and there are the Charas track um, and sponsored workshop, especially if you're from a corporation and you wanna like maybe advertise your products. The sponsored presentation is a better place to do that. But also check out the other opportunities like giving lightning talks or attend one of the summits. We have like education summit or packaging summit. We also have web assembly summit. So if your topic of talks might fit in one of those more focused summits, check them out. And also during PyCon US, we will have lots of open spaces where you can just meet other people. You get to have 1 hour slot in a room. You get to discuss with a lot of people about specific topic. So that's another opportunity if you have things you want to say with other Python community members. Um, anyway,
And
thank
on-site
you again.
volunteering opportunities as well.
Sorry, I missed it. Can you repeat that?
Sorry, I was saying, and on-site volunteering opportunities as well. I personally spend most of the week at PyCon volunteering on site, and it's a very fulfilling experience.
Right. And the good thing about volunteering, I feel that especially volunteering for the green room, that's a great place to meet the speakers, to meet other speakers. And I found it useful, like just to see, you get to see how speakers practice their talk in the green room. It's fun, and you get to actually introduce yourself and say hi to speakers and thank them for their great talk. It's a really and you don't have to be an experienced PyCon attendee. Even if you are first time attendee at PyCon US, you can volunteer. And in fact, that is one of the best way to meet even more people at PyCon US. So yeah, is there anything else you would like to add, Philip?
No, that pretty much covers it on my end. Thank you, Marietta.
Thank you so much. And remember, PyCon US CFP closes in December 18, 2023. December 18, anywhere on Earth. That's what AOE means, anywhere on Earth. So if what it means, if it's still December 18 where you live, you can still submit a talk. So that's the deadline. Do not miss it. And speaking of travel grant, the deadline for travel grant application is February 16 or so. Again, do not miss it if that's something you require in order to attend PyCon US. All right. Thank you for listening, and thank you, Philip, for your time.
Thank you.